Hello, everyone. My name is Corey Washington. I am the author of Nobody Cages Me and Jimi Hendrix Black Legacy. This video will mainly be an attempt to show how Jimi Hendrix was deeply impacted by Black culture, and he also impacted Black culture himself. And that includes things like fashion, music, other artists that were influenced by him, and so forth. So this is going to be broken into two parts. The first part, we're going to just focus on a little background information on myself and Jimi Hendrix, and then we'll get into the fashion aspect. And then the second part will take a deep dive into his impact on Black music in various genres. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll start by sharing the screen here, and then we can get started with our PowerPoint. Okay, so as the title says, Jimi Hendrix's legacy, his impact on Black music and culture. So first, a little something about myself. Um, Native New Yorker, now residing in Augusta, Georgia for over 34 years, 20-year educator. I'm teaching middle school now, but I've also taught high school here in Augusta. I've taught various subjects, U.S. history, world history, U.S. government, world geography, language arts, and math, which I'm currently teaching language arts and math. I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree from Augusta State University in middle grades curriculum and instruction. I'm the author of four nonfiction books, two of them on racism and stereotypes, and two on Jimi Hendrix. I'm also the founder of the Augusta Literary Festival, which is currently dormant. Hopefully, it will be coming back at some point. I'm the spokesperson for the National Rhythm and Blues Hall of Fame, and so hopefully you'll be hearing some great things about that coming soon. And also, I'm on the National Board for the Hendrix Music Academy in Seattle, headed by Tina Hendrix. Now, my journey to the discovery of Hendrix and my brief musical background. Go back. I was born January 11th, 1976 in New York City, Queens to be specific. Lived most of my time in Brooklyn though when I was a kid. I grew up listening to disco, house music, club music, hip hop, soul, R&B, pop, things of that nature. Would never really consider myself a big rock and roll fan or electric guitar fan, but I always did appreciate 80s pop rock, Michael Jackson, Beat It, Van Halen, Jump, various Huey Lewis and the News songs. I mean, all of those things were around New York City when I was growing up. I moved to the South in 1986, right as hip hop started to enter its golden age. In the early 90s, you had all of these hip hop samples, which eventually led me to discovering things like P-Funk and other obscure music that they were sampling. Eventually, I became a huge fan of Sly and the Family Stone, and I believe that this prepared me to embrace the music of another black musical genius, Jimi Hendrix. I had a musical epiphany. I never really paid attention to Hendrix growing up, but I was a big wrestling fan. At that particular time, the NWO, the New World Order, was emerging as a big thing in wrestling, and Hulk Hogan was now a bad guy. Started calling himself Hollywood Hulk Hogan, as you see in the picture there. His entrance music, that's something that really caught my ear, and it was none other than Jimi Hendrix's Voodoo Child. Once I found out that it was Jimmy, I went out and started buying his music, and I've never looked back. I began to wonder if there were more people out there like me. I also began to wonder why Jimi Hendrix was not as well known in the black community for someone of his stature. So I started to explore these topics deeply in a college research paper at Augusta State University. Now, this led me to my first book called Nobody Cages Me. This was actually as a result of that college paper, and this book came out in 2010. I pretty much told in detail my musical journey to Hendrix. I also examined things like why didn't Jimmy get played on black radio? Because his music was really funky when you really examine it. And then I also took myself to task for not giving him a chance initially, and I wrote about that story in the book as well. Pretty much wrote this book as a total unknown in the Hendrix world. Soon I began to attract attention because there were not many black, especially young black authors who were writing about Hendrix. I was 34 at the time that this book came out. This led me to my Jimi Hendrix Black Legacy blog talk radio show, which was like a podcast before everybody was doing the podcast. As more people began to take notice, I started interviewing people on their thoughts on Jimmy's lack of appreciation in the black community. I interviewed a wide range of people, those people who never even met Jimmy but were inspired by him, people that maybe have met him from a distance, a brief encounter with him, and those who were close friends, family, and bandmates. As I started to amass all of this information on Jimmy's role in the black community, I knew that I had to do a bigger book that went even further than Nobody Cages Me. When it comes to the Jimi Hendrix Black Legacy, podcast, I interviewed 29 people on my blog talk show, and they were able to collectively offer insight into Jimmy's Black Legacy. People like Daryl Dogan, who was my first interview, rest in peace. Gary Tyson, who was on radio in Chicago. Rosalie Brooks, rest in peace. Jimi Hendrix collaborator on two songs, UT and My Diary. Steve Mose out of Cleveland, Ohio. Brewdew, who I collaborated with, he's in St. Louis now. Earl Grey Summers, who's a local teacher here in Augusta. Sheldon Reynolds, rest in peace. He was a part of Earth, Wind, and Fire's son. He was also married to Jimi Hendrix at one time, over the Jimi Hendrix estate. Chris Cochet out of California, Leon Hendrix, Jimmy's brother, Ali Bishop, who's out of New York City, a musician. Jimmy Blue, who's currently doing Kiss the Sky, a long, long, long time Hendrix aficionado. Uh, he's had so much to say. Stan Skibby, who's overseas now. Byron Bordeaux out of California. Danny Robertson, rest in peace, who was overseas but originally from Detroit. Charles Neal, rest in peace, originally from New York, but moved to Canada. Andre LaSalle still doing his thing in New York City. Chelsea Dawn, stepdaughter of Buddy Miles. Solo Rubenstein, the daughter of Alan Douglas. Professor Griff from Public Enemy. Taharka Arleen, one of the ghetto fighters, a very close friend of Jimmy. Cordell Dickerson has some knowledge. He was based out of D.C., but I think he's originally from New Orleans, and he might be in Atlanta now. I'm not sure. Mike Hampton, Kid Funkadelic from Parliament Funkadelic, originally out of Cleveland. Baba Sela out of New York City. Rufus Thompson, originally out of Ohio, now residing in the DMV area. King George Clemens, who was a friend of Hendrix from back in the day, started off in New York City, then he eventually moved over to Sweden, and that's where he is now. Jimmy Mays, the amazing Jimmy Mays, once again, collaborator with Jimmy, his friend, who's currently in Jackson, Mississippi. Juma Sultan played with Jimmy at Woodstock, another great friend of Hendrix. Ricky Vincent, the Uhuru Maggot, every Friday night, the history of funk, show is still going on. Always gives props to Jimmy every year. Tim Kinley, who's right now in Columbia, South Carolina, scholar of the funk, also did a special show on Velvet Turner. Had some obscure Jimmy songs on this show, memorial tributes, and talked about things like his influence on funk and various genres like jazz. All of these things were topics on the Blog Talk show. developing the definitive book on Jimmy's Black legacy. That's what I set out to do. I started to gather all this information, this research, and then I came to the startling and shocking conclusions. Number one, Jimmy has more black fans than people realize. A lot of people don't realize the amount of black people that actually like Jimi Hendrix because they just look at his music and say, oh, that's rock, white people's music, blah, blah, blah. But, it doesn't matter, how you came to realize Jimi Hendrix or how you came to discover him if you were a black person. But he has something for everybody. Number two, Jimmy has more impact on black music and culture than he gets credit for, which is what we're going to take a deep dive into on this presentation. And number three, Jimmy's dream of respect in the black community is slowly but surely coming to fruition. It's what I call a dream deferred. And it took several false starts. I had writer's block, procrastination, and almost like 8 years went by, but I was finally able to write the book that I always wanted to see on Jimmy, which was Jimi Hendrix Black Legacy, A Dream Deferred. And here's the old school cover of the book, which is a painting by Grady Abrams, who's no longer with us. But he drew this painting here that I had converted for my book cover, very colorful. And these are some of the people that have brought the book and family members like my Aunt Val, Sam Dotton from the DMV, uh, King George Clemens right here, and Alex. These both of them are over there in Sweden. And also we have I think that's Eric right there, and he's got both of the books. My aunt Jamia, she's got it. Old school. There's Rufus rocking his Jimmy shirt and the book. That's who's that? Is that Alan right there? I think that from Utah. And then there's Baba Sela from New York. And there's from Baltimore. We got who's that? Can't see him with the mask. We got Robert. I think he's out of Ohio. And down here, Paul Vickers, I think he's in Arkansas. Okay, so we got all of these various peoples from all walks of life. Like I said, here's Daryl Dogan, the first person I interviewed for the Blog Talk Show, RIP. Gary Tyson, Rosalie Brooks, RIP. Steve Mose, Earl Grey Summers, Chris Cochet, RIP to Sheldon Reynolds, Brew EV9 right there. So all of these various people. Leon Hendricks, I interviewed him for my blog talk. He's in the book. Ali Bishop, Jimmy Blue, Stan Skibby, Byron Bordeaux, RIP to Danny Robinson, Charles Neal, RIP, and there's Andre LaSalle. All of these people I've met, had a conversation with a lot of them, met them in person. There's Chelsea Dawn with Buddy Miles, is Juma Sultan and Taharka Alim, Solo Rubenstein, daughter of Alan Douglas, Cordell Dickerson, Kid Funkadelic, Mike Hampton, Baba Sela again, and there's Rufus again. There's Professor Griff. Let me get my picture out the way. I think y'all know what he looks like though. All right, so these are all the various people. The amazing Jimmy Mays, Billy Cox is in the book. Here's Alex and King George Clemens again. Here's Ernie Isley from the Isley Brothers. He was in the book. This is Mr. Washington here from Slave, Steve Washington. He was also quoted in the book. Ricky Vincent, Tim Kinley. So all of these different people. And of course, thanks to Grant Harper Reed for this revamped cover of my book, where he allowed me to release a picture of Jimmy that he had taken in Harlem. And if you look at the shirts, this is the United Block Association. This was the organization that Jimmy did the free concert for as a fundraiser in Harlem. So this was taken in Harlem right here where he posed, and it's quite an iconic picture. Now let's talk about a quick intro on the life of Jimi Hendrix. We see some various pictures of him when he was younger, him with his father Al, in Seattle. We went back and, you know, as a famous person, I'm pretty sure that felt good. Jimmy's humble beginnings to international rock star. Jimi Hendrix was born November 27th, 1942, in Seattle, Washington, the Central District. His father was Al Hendrix, his mother was Lucille. He had a rough family life, plagued by alcoholism. His parents divorced when he was 9. His father got custody of him and his brother Leon. His mother died when he was 16 years old. He had a younger brother, Leon, that he stayed with, but he also had 3 other siblings that were given up for adoption, 2 sisters and 1 brother. After getting into trouble as a teen, he was given a tough choice, jail or the military. Well, he chose the latter, the military. He was stationed at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, where he met Billy Cox. Once they were out of the army, they took up music full time in Nashville, Tennessee. And that's where Hendrix got his chops playing R&B, Nashville, Tennessee. If you look at this picture here, I took this in Nashville. They have a big mural, and it's supposed to depict the time when Jimmy was going up against Johnny Jones, and as they say, cutting heads, trying to, a young upstart musician, unknown of Jimi Hendrix going up against the seasoned veteran Johnny Jones, and I believe Johnny Jones won that one. So I mean, it probably was a lesson learned for Hendrix. Now Jimmy's moved from the South or Tennessee to the North, New York City. Jimmy took his musical talents eventually to New York City, a bigger market for music that he was playing, settling in Harlem, where he was playing behind R&B legends like the Isley Brothers, Little Richard, Don Covey, King Curtis, etc. And he would often clash with these stars for either upstaging them or playing too loud, which was considered loud back then for R&B music. The guitar was kind of muted and a background instrument, but that's not what Jimmy was all about. R&B was not ready for the guitar-heavy sound of Jimmy, so he had to move to Greenwich Village and play his own brand of eclectic electric fusion. Of course, this is where Linda Keith introduces him to Chas Chandler from the Animals, who eventually whisk him off to England to form the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Um, but while over there in Europe, Jimmy's authentic R&B and blues roots would blow everyone away. He had something that a lot of the British guitar greats didn't have, and that was that authentic Nashville experience and being around all of those legends rooted in the blues, gospel, R&B, and so forth. Jimmy soon creates the most impressive debut album of all time, which is Are You Experience? And the music world was never the same. Eventually, Jimmy would make his way back to the United States from England, and that opportunity came in the form of 1967, the Monterey Pop Festival, where you had The Who, Otis Redding, the Mamas and the Papas. This was the summer of love in the Bay Area, California. All of these things would culminate into the reintroduction of Jimi Hendrix to United States audiences. This is where Jimmy set his guitar and also set the world on fire at the same time. From that point on, minus the Monkees tour, of course, Jimmy would go on a substantial and successful tour of the United States. The Are You Experience album was soon followed by 2 other classics. The latter part of 1967, Axe as Bold as Love, which just had a recent box release issue, and 1968, Electric Ladyland. That album was his 3rd album, studio album. But Jimmy would reach his zenith at the most important concert in the history of the world, 1969's Woodstock. He was the highest paid performer. He performed a controversial rendition of the Star Spangled Banner, which became the standard for anybody playing a guitar version afterwards. And to put everything in context, 1969 saw the friction of the counterculture, the hippies, and the powers that be, the military, the government, concerning the Vietnam War, clash on morals, drugs, you name it. You also had the Black Power movement with the civil rights movement going on with the Black Panthers. Jimmy was quickly becoming a cult hero to all of these factions. He was also concerned about the lack of diversity in his audiences. Now, this is Jimmy's transformation, the psychedelic phase in the 1967 all the way up to mid 68. You experienced all of these psychedelic, uh, clothes and so forth, and you see, the colorful clothing, Monterey, Miami Pop, which in May 68. Then you had late 1968 to 1970, which was his more grounded or earthy phase, so to speak. We had him at Woodstock. You had it, the band of Gypsies and things of that nature, where you started to see a lot of the psychedelic colors and stuff. That was just going out of phasing out in general in the world anyway. As you see here, band of Gypsies. Woodstock, there you see Juma Sultan. This is on the Dick Cavett show. Juma, Mitch, Billy Cox, and Jimmy, of course. But what set Jimi Hendrix apart from all other guitarists? How did he have the biggest impact on black culture and music? Well, for one, it was his style, his fashion. He had that wow factor, that cool factor. He lived a lifestyle of a rock star, the woman, the drugs, that was a lot of the things that people remember him by, even though behind the scenes he was very soft-spoken and shy. His influence on musicians of his day and well into the future, could you still see it in the lifestyle that some of these people live? And he also had a multi-genre approach to music, which the whole world would follow eventually. Now we're talking also about Jimmy, the fashion trendsetter. This is how he kind of started off in England with a trench coat, London fog type situation. Very drab, not very much color, not really a fashion plate as you see here. Then as you see, he started to get more color in his outfits, very colorful. Look at the pants here, the orange and all of these different things. Here he started off in the R&B groups just wearing plain Jane black suits and white shirts and a little tie there. But then look at him, he emerged to be an explosion of different colors and fashions. And you even look over here, there's a picture of the Mac in the movie Goldie. And then you look over here, Jimmy had that style already going even before that movie in the 60s. And if you see over here in the corner, you kind of see Prince and you see Jimi Hendrix, but you see obviously Jimi Hendrix had that style first before Prince would have these different styles like that with the high collar and the things like that. So Jimmy definitely was a fashion trendsetter. You had others follow suit. You look at Ernie Osley with the bandana, of course, playing behind his back. This is Black Murder, who was actually the first group to do a Jimi Hendrix song and put it on wax, Foxy Lady. Look at the hat here with the circles on it. Then you look down here, and this is Bootsy Collins in the 2000s. I think he was in Columbia at the Columbia Library when I took this picture. Here's Jimmy at Woodstock. Look at the Native American inspired fringes here, and then you look at Little Richard in 1971 here with the same kind of fringes, and of course the bandana right here with Little Richard. But you see, I think Prince would adopt something like this kind of bandana with that Little Richard has. So Jimmy's influence was, you know, f- it outlived him, so to speak. The ruffled shirt, the military style jackets, we can go ahead and look and see here. You had Michael Jackson with the military style jacket. Look at here, you see Rick James with the military style jackets. You see the ruffled collar here. Prince had it. That was in the 80s, but Jimmy already had that in the 60s. military jackets in the 60s and so forth. So all of these things were Jimmy already set those fashion trends. The Isley brothers, this is how they were looking like in the early days, right along with everybody else. Now look at them over here. That jacket look familiar, what Chris Jasper has on? We just showed Jimmy with a style jacket like that. And Ernie Isley with the headband. Everybody has a different flair to them. Parliament Funkadelic. This is the early days of Funkadelic. I mean, they were kind of wild back then, but you could see they were kind of dressing like street clothes, the fashion, normal fashion. But then when you see them, when they blew up, you can see the wildness and the different colors and, expressing themselves any kind of way they want. Look at Earth, Wind, and Fire, look at their outfits and things like that. Look at this Philip Bailey. I think Jimmy had a vest like that he wore too. So all of these different things. The brothers Johnson, look at them. Everybody changed their fashion. This is Lenny Kravitz, then Andre 3000. And look at this military jacket once again with Lil Wayne on the cover of Vibe. Also Jimmy would impact multiple genres of music. Two of the traits that separate Jimi Hendrix from most guitarists and artists are his global impact and influence on many forms of music. His musical tentacles were all over the place, in obvious genres like rock and blues and R&B and maybe soul, but he also influenced jazz, funk, and hip hop, and to a lesser extent, country. Of course, his music was like a hybrid of all of these different types of genres. So that was something that was very interesting there. But what we're going to do is we're going to stop here and we're going to pick up on part two, where we're going to get deeper into his genres that he was influencing. So that was definitely our first part where we kind of took a look at Hendrix and we took a look at his early life, his influence on fashion, and certainly these things are, notable and still going on today. So that's where we're going to stop at right now. And we'll kind of pick up on part two, where we'll take a deeper dive into it. All right. So now, if you like what you saw, we definitely got Cash App right here. If you want to see more videos like this, you could contribute to the Cash App, $ C Washington 76. Anybody contributing over $30, you just leave your address. I'll send you a copy of a collector's edition of my book. Not Nobody Cages Me, but the Jimi Hendrix Black Legacy book. The one that the cover is out of print. I'll send you that. Anybody contributing $30 and over. And it's this cover right here. Let me go back to it. And these covers are no longer in print right here. But I have a few at the house that I can send people as a token of appreciation for anybody contributing $30 or more on the Cash App. So if, $5, $10, that's fine too. But anything is appreciated. So let's go ahead and close it out right here. And I look forward to part two, which will really be fun as we go ahead and examine how Jimi Hendrix influenced different genres as far as, um, we're going to get into everything. So look forward to that and appreciate everybody's time and attention. Thank you.